That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Comic Reviews. Got a pretty short show tonight, only 4 normal books plus a trade to talk about. So hopefully it won't be another 2.5 hour epic. Before I get started, as I wait for people to arrive live, just wanted to post a reminder about the next episode of Comic Book Club, which will be, next Saturday, July 28th, tentatively at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be covering Godzilla: The Half-Century War. This is an IDW comic. Now, if you don't know what Comic Book Club is, let me tell you. If you have a legal copy of the book we are discussing, get a legal copy, buying it online, go to your local comic shop, rent it from your local library, then you can join the Comic Book Club. All you need is a microphone and headphones, and you can take part in the live discussion. I send the link out to join the discussion about 15 to 20 minutes before the show starts, and we sit around just like a book club and discuss the comic. So the time again will be July 28th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope to see you there. This is a pretty good volume to jump on. If you don't really know anything about Godzilla, but you just want to talk, this is a really good introduction to the character and kind of thing. Doesn't really require you to know a lot about the universe. Highly recommend it. Hope to see as many of you there as possible. Alright. Let's see here. I've got live people. Smash Time says, "Hey, did you pick up another volume of My Girlfriend is a T-Rex?" No, that's a one-off. That is a one-off special occasion, my friend. That was done for the views. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and break down what we'll be talking about tonight. We'll be starting off with Batwoman, number 17, followed by Batman Wonder Woman, The Brave and the Bold, number 6, Darth Vader Annual, number 2, Batman, number 51, and then for Trade Talk, we'll be talking about Daredevil, The Man Without Fear. So, plenty of stuff to get into tonight. Plenty of things to talk about. Should be a grand old time. A yabba-doo time. It'll be a gay old time. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started then. With Batwoman, number 17. So Margaret Bennett's wrapping up her series. I believe this is supposed to end at issue 18, and I guess we're getting like a quick little 2-part arc to kind of tie up all the loose ends of her run. And what's interesting is she's doing this by introducing a villain that, as far as I know, this is the first time we've seen him in DC Rebirth. So she's introducing a new take on the Clock King. And that's kind of cool. I like the design for Clock King. He's, make Clock King a black guy. That's kind of cool. He's got a face tattoo of a clock. That's a little surprising. So there's, it's just wrapping up what Kate Kane's doing, what direction she's putting herself on in life now. And she's deciding to, go and set down roots in Gotham and try to deal with the fallout from her latest adventure. Also, she's living with her sister now, but because they don't know what triggers her evil personality, they're keeping her like in a little sectioned off part of an apartment. Just interesting. Like she's got like the Hannibal Lecter glass. You can see the air holes at the top right there if you pay attention. So I don't know, it's an interesting idea. So they're like, and they sort of say, nope, and don't you dare let me out until we do, because they want to figure out what triggers the Alice personality, what's going on with it. And so she's living a healthy lifestyle, having the support of her sister, but not able to be kidnapped or taken away, I guess is the idea. Anyway. Clock King's new look is a holdover from the Green Arrow comic. Oh, okay, cool. That works. So he is doing a thing that's, Murder Bennett has some interesting little ideas come up. Yeah, okay, so here's the page where they explain it. And I just love this visualization of the weirdness. So Clock King is having automatons that run on clockwork, of course. He's having them sell drugs to criminals that, instead of giving you a high, lets you see just an instant or two into the future. And so, if you're a bank robber, if you take it, you'll know if Batman's going to show up, or if the security guard is going to try to be a hero. And it's just like such a weird and interesting premise. And so these pills are being sold by clockwork guys because they don't steal, they don't if you catch one, they don't give up information, stuff like that. It's just a really interesting premise, and so Kate Kane is looking into this as she's, trying to finally set down roots in Gotham long term and whatnot. And throughout this, we also get a flashback to, kind of an epilogue of the ongoing story with what Kate Kane's doing and with Sophia as she kind of abandons her past and really does try to just look to the future. So it's interesting. But yeah, it starts off, it kind of ends with her going to a masked ball with Renee Montoya, kind of hinting at the idea that Kate Kane and Montoya might strike up a new relationship, as they've been kind of an on-again, off-again item. But then Clock King shows up at the masked ball, and all of the patrons take off their masks and are revealed to be the automatons. So, I don't know, for an epilogue, it certainly doesn't feel like an epilogue. It feels like this is going to be, continuing. Murder Bennett, of course, always really precise on the writing. I like this cover. It kind of makes more sense now, because clockwork. Murder Bennett always very precise and intentional with the writing. As she talks about Kate Kane moving forward with her life, doing, or putting her past behind her, all that stuff. The arc is called The Time of Your Life, using Clock King as the villain. It's got these layers to it. So, pretty good issue. Pretty, happy with it. Nothing too much to say beyond that. Artistically, it's, this artist has been on the run for most of it. And he's been doing, a really solid job. Presents really strong visuals, has a cool style. I do like this design that Kate Kane's in for this masked ball kind of thing. Red suit. She kind of looks like the devil more than a bat, but it's kind of cool. So yeah, lots of stuff like that. It just kind of works. Let's go ahead and move along then to Batman Wonder Woman, The Brave and the Bold, number 6. So I'll start off with the negative. End of book 1. It's a 6-issue mini. I don't have a problem with things getting renewed for a second volume, and Liam Sharp has definitely shown himself to be not only an accomplished artist, but he's able to weave a fairly compelling and intriguing story with some cool ideas behind it. Even if it does have some problems with the way it handles narration and keeping your attention. 6 issues. This has been a monthly series, so I've spent 6 months with this story. It's like half over. It really feels like feels like we're on our way to a pretty natural conclusion, and then seriously, right after this point, it just goes straight to sequel town, in which nothing is going to be fully resolved by the end of this. We're just setting up what is going to have to be dealt with in the next volume. And so, while the first volume was about Batman, Wonder Woman being called to help on this matter of the potential of a war breaking out, the matter of this mythological thing. It makes much sense for. It makes a lot of sense for her to be dealing with this because it's very diplomatic. There's not only the divide between the human world to consider and the world of fairy, but there's also these political divides within the fairy community that she's kind of negotiating and working on. And then there's this murder thrown into all of it. And so Batman's brought in to help solve the case kind of thing. It's a very natural and it's interesting. It's a fun role for both of them to fulfill together. I'm not really sure what the dynamic is for the sequel as to why you need Batman at all in the sequel. Because, the way this works is the murder mystery was not actually a murder. It was a misdirect. The king faked his own death so that he could go to the human world and open a gate to allow the fairy folk back to the human world. The unintended consequence of that action was releasing a great evil that had been banished for centuries, and that evil was the king's brother of the evil eye, and blah 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 blah. And so they have this whole conversation, and it's honestly intriguing. Again, I want to read this series as a whole. But then the king is murdered by his brother. The bridge, the pathway to Gotham itself seems to have closed, but now the worlds are bridged together, and so there are paths that are now open for the fairy folk to come back to Earth through. And Wonder Woman is not able to wholly defeat the villain, but she is able to halt his advance and keep him and his army from going to Gotham. But now Wonder Woman's trapped in the land of the fairy, because the only person that can get her back was killed and has now been reborn as a baby, so she has to wait till he's grown to be able to come back. And Batman's on the other side trying to figure out what to do to prepare Earth for this coming evil. And I'm sure you can get the Justice League and all that stuff, or he's Batman, he's the man that can come up with the plan, blah, 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 blah. But it's a much less natural role for him. It feels much less vital. You got a murder mystery to solve, get the world's greatest detective. You've got a magical invasion, get Zatanna. Just go get Zatanna, because she's clearly much more qualified for this than Batman is. Get Constantine, get Dr. Fate, get Etrigan the Demon. It's not that Batman can't think of something or can't help, but he's just so not qualified for this comparatively to how he fit earlier. And again, it's not that I don't like the idea of doing a sequel or a follow-up to this series, but a 6-issue miniseries should be a 6-issue miniseries. It should tell a complete story in 6 issues. And if you want to do a sequel, it seems like there are ways to do that without making the last issue of this series I waited 6 months to finish. It seems like there's just a way to do that without dropping the ball there, you know? That and Wonder Woman's barely in this issue. This is mostly about the fairy folk. Batman gets a little more to do in this issue than Wonder Woman does, because she's just kind of on the battlefield and Batman's kind of dealing with the potential for these guys to show up in Gotham. But honestly, this is mostly about Liam Sharp's characters that he's created for this, the fairy folk, and the royal struggle and all that stuff. So it's not that it's like poorly written character-wise or plot-wise. If I knew I was getting another issue in a month, I might not be as upset about the way this concludes. But ultimately, you know... Alright, so it took 6 months to read the series. I don't even think the second volume has been announced yet until here. How long is it going to take Liam Sharp to write and draw another 6 issues? Or let's say another 2 issues so you can have a lead on it. It's probably going to be a minute. So we're probably going to look to at least a 3-month gap before we could even get the first issue of Volume 2. Kuma Ranger says, I'm okay with the sequel bait because the miniseries was well handled. Had this been dull or terrible and they give us the sequel bait, I would immediately go, how dare you? Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I'm not... I am doing a lot of complaining about this, but I'm not, like, mad. I'm just kind of disappointed. I just don't feel that this is the way to handle a miniseries. Question, would you be open to reading a book about Liam Sharp's fairy world? You know, I could see it. It could work. Suppose the foundations are there, what with Sandman being in the DC universe and whatnot. You could probably do something like that. I don't know. I don't know exactly what he'd want to do with it, but you know, he's definitely proven himself as a capable writer, if not the best structural one. And I mean that both in structuring out this series and in the structure of how he writes sometimes, as far as narrative choices. But yeah, I could see that. The thing for me though is Wonder Woman books are rare isn't the right word. Wonder Woman books are really hard to keep going, it seems. Wonder Woman is, you know, one of the big 3 at DC, and yet she's had, I think, the most volumes of books. If I'm not mistaken, I think the longest running series Wonder Woman has had has been like less than 300 issues. Which, I mean, yeah, that's like close to 20 years, but still. When you had like Batman and Superman going on multiple titles for over 500 issues, that's kind of nuts, right? Well, like Batman was at 700 something by the time they went to New 52. Superman was at... Yeah, I think this... No, Superman was up and down too. As far as relaunching series. But still... You had action at 1,000 now. You had detective at close to the same. Wonder Woman's main series has had a hard time going. You look at something like The Legend of Wonder Woman, which was a just beloved 12-issue series that people were really into. A lot of people liked it. It didn't get a second volume, and as much as I like that series, a lot of what happened in it really needed a second volume to flesh out, and it just didn't get it. So I don't know if he had this plan from the beginning to end the series on a cliffhanger and do a second volume, or if he's been promised by DC that he's going to get a second volume now, and so he wants to lead into that. Either way, I still feel like leaving things on such a cliffhanger, relatively speaking, is a poor choice. It's not something I can really get behind. Let's talk about the art a little bit, because that's fucking gorgeous. That part hasn't changed. Again, Liam Sharp writing and drawing is really cool. I love when the whole writer-artist dynamic can come together on a book, and it looks so good. The way he draws Wonder Woman, entering through the flames and blocking the evil magic eye stuff, that's pretty cool. Again, she doesn't get a ton to do in this issue in particular, but it was still pretty cool. I quite like this series. Oh, on the whole, I quite like this series, despite my reservations about the end. So, yeah, that's what I got for you. All right, let's go ahead and move along to Darth Vader Annual number 2. This is the annual of Soule's Darth Vader run, but this issue is not written by Charles Soule. It is written by Chuck Wendig, with art by Leonard Kirk. This is a good issue, a pretty interesting issue. Particularly if you liked Rogue One, you should probably get some kicks out of this. But it comes with a weird caveat, which is this should have come out before the previous issue in the series. And I don't know how this will be collected in trade, but at the heart of this issue is a rivalry, and a bitter one to some degree, that exists between Darth Vader and Tarkin within the Empire. Because, and they do a pretty good job of establishing it early on, but Vader keeps having murder fantasies about Tarkin, and it's just not very appreciative. There's a power struggle going on within the top ranks of the Empire there, and Vader's really not pleased about it. Which is fine, and that's an interesting dynamic to create. We just had an issue which was off the end of an arc that showed some friction between Vader and Tarkin, but showed that they actually can work really well together in the arc, and then an issue that showed that they have a great deal of respect for one another. Vader respects Tarkin as someone that can actually be a threat to him, and Tarkin respects Vader's just limitless power and skill. And so to have this kind of snide relationship in here, it just feels like a different book. And so I don't know, it's definitely a different writer, so that kind of explains it, but it's a very weird dynamic to read one issue later as far as someone who's reading monthly. I'm not sure how much of a criticism that really is, because annuals are meant to stand on their own more. This does. Annuals are weirdly collected a lot of the times, if at all, as far as series of runs go. there's every possibility this won't be collected with the whatever the last issue was. I want to say 19. So maybe that's the thing. I don't know. It's weird. So yeah, there seems to be a lack of communication. But anyway, I like where this opens. So like I said, if you're a fan of Rogue One, you'll really like this. This opens on Scarif. Before it was blown up. With Tarkin landing and being very upset and going straight to the data vaults. And there he finds Darth Vader looking up Project Stardust, which Vader is not supposed to know anything about and has no authorization to access. So Tarkin gets very snide with Vader, and Vader goes into murder fantasy mode, which is quite fun. Ultimately, Tarkin pulls out his trump card, which is to say, the Emperor has given me authority over you, and the Emperor straight does and tells Vader to his face that he's subordinate to Tarkin, and he's going to go help find out what's going on Geonosis with the Project Stardust weapon that's causing it so many delays. As Vader goes to Geonosis, there's immediately an attack on him as he arrives and is greeted by everyone's favorite Imperial why can't I say it? Name. Kenrick? The dude from Rogue One. Why can't I fucking say it? Commander Orson Kenrick. Krennic. I fucking know the name and it's not coming out. Anyway, so yeah, there's an attack on them, and so Vader starts looking into what happened and what's going on, and he gets a briefing from one of his Krenric. I can't fucking get it tonight. I'd have to hear it to be able to say it right now. He gets a briefing from one of his spies about who Tarkin and Krenric are. I'm going to fuck this up every time I say it, and it's going to piss me off. And how they both have a rivalry, but they both also want power that the Empire gives them, so they're clearly not the cause of the delays with the weapon. So Vader goes to Galen Erso's office to try to do some snooping, because that's the best lead his spy can give him. There he finds a Geonosian egg. Krennic. Thank you for the phonetics. Yeah, so Vader finds an egg, takes it to Krennic. Yeah, that sounds right now. God damn, fuck me. Professional reviewer, folks. Takes it to Krennic, determines that there is a rogue population of Geonosians that are breeding without permission and sabotaging the building of the Death Star. So he just murders the shit out of them. We get a cool flashback I quite like, where Vader's reporting what he found and what he did to Tarkin. He's like, "And you said you dealt with them. Dare I ask how?" "They were animals, so I slaughtered them like animals." And that is a legit cool panel. I quite like that. I also like the way Vader's being rendered throughout this issue, where he's got the red lenses. That's really cool. It completely contradicts everything Charles Soule's been doing, but that's okay. Or been going on in Charles Soule's run. Let me put it that way. So I don't know. That was pretty neat. Yada yada yada. Vader and Tarkin are having a pissing contest, and there's a little epilogue that kind of sets into events, or into motion the events in Rogue One, where Galen Erso and his wife and daughter run away. Anyway, I don't know. It's a pretty good issue overall. It doesn't really feel like it's in step with what Soul's Run has been doing, which, if I'd been enjoying Soul's Run on the whole a lot more, like if I'd liked Soul's Run as much as I liked the last arc and last issue of Soul's Run, this would be more of a problem for me. And it's not like it's hugely out of step. It's just got a little bit of an offness, and you can definitely tell this is written by someone else who has a different perspective on this series, or on the characters. Kind of like this cover for the next issue. That's pretty sweet. Anyway. Yeah, that's about all I got. Not much to talk about the art here. It just works for the most part. I like the coloring choices to just give you the sense of what Vader thinks about when he's getting angry, and so they just color it in red, and it's like his little fantasies about what he'd do to Tarkin if he had free reign over him. So yeah, cool. Let's go ahead and move on to the final single issue of the week, which is Batman number 51. You know, I remember hearing just vaguely that King was going to go on to Mr. Freeze next from the wedding issues, and I was like, okay, whatever, it works. Didn't really mean much to me. Spoilers for issue 50, but Selina leaving Bruce at the altar kind of situation is incredibly tragic and sad, and you just, you feel so bad for him. To go straight to Mr. Freeze after that as the villain, it's just that perfect touch. It's that perfect thing where we always talk about this. Batman's villains are in some way, shape, or form a reflection of himself. So who is what part of Batman is Mr. Freeze a reflection on? And it's the idea of tragedy. It's the idea of something, you know, not just tragedy, like inescapable, unfixable tragedy. Just that thing that's like, it's some awful thing that you never could have thought of happening to you. And there's no way to prepare or stop or fight against it. It's completely out of your hands. It's the world being cruel to you. So that's the way in which, most direct way, you can also talk about the intelligence, the science, but the most direct way in which Batman and Mr. Freeze parallel each other. So to put Mr. Freeze as the villain of the arc is really interesting. And also to take Batman out of costume for presumably the issue and maybe even the whole arc, for the most part, that's pretty interesting too. So yeah, we got some interesting stuff going on in this issue. We open with Bruce Wayne reporting to Gotham City Court for jury duty. And what case is Bruce Wayne having to fill jury duty on? It's a case of murders that Mr. Freeze committed. Mr. Freeze committed some murders. Batman caught him and, you know, through a brutal interrogation, forced him to confess to the murders. And so now Mr. Freeze is on trial for those murders after confessing, and Bruce Wayne is serving on the jury. Yeah, that's the premise of the issue. But because he's on the jury, he can't really leave the premises and amenities that are being provided for him. And so he's got to not be Batman for a while. And so we get The Dick Knight Returns. Dick Grayson Batman is fun. I like it. It's just a cool, fun thing. So yeah, Dick Grayson's back in the cape and cowl, taking over for a while so that Batman can be on the streets without Bruce having to be Batman. And the the defense is arguing that what the GCPD did in taking advice from Batman and allowing Batman to perform autopsies and whatnot was unprofessional, that the coroner was unable to come up to the same conclusions that Batman was, so therefore the GCPD shouldn't just have taken Batman's word for it. They should trust their own coroner more, blah, blah, blah. And of course the background for all this of Batman beating the shit out of Mr. Freeze to extract confession is that it happened to him on the heels of being left at the altar. I started tonight talking about Batwoman #1, and there was a moment in it that I didn't mention. This is something that's kind of affecting the wider Bat family books. This line from Batwoman: "Not that we've had a ton of time to explore options. Batman's little disappointment means he's been throwing himself into his work like a man throwing himself off a bridge. And if he's working, we're working, and he won't let us forget it." And, of course, the whole disappointment has a little editor's note. See Batman #50. So there's definitely a lot going on there contextually behind the character. Like, this is not happening in isolation. Batman's got a tendency to, have tragedies in his personal life affect the way he treats people. Kind of infamously, whenever a Robin dies, because that's a regular thing that happens, he kind of goes off the deep end and starts just brutalizing people, which would be terrible in real life, but in comics it's a fun character trait, I guess. But anyway, so he's here at trial, and he's hearing all these things and these thoughts that are going on. And he just has to excuse himself for a minute, go to the bathroom, and just rip a urinal off the wall and throw it across the fucking room, which is a pretty good way to show that he's definitely not in a good place mentally right now. He's having a hard time processing the what's the word I want here? The unfortunate situation Selina Kyle left him in. And that all gets compounded pretty heavily when Mr. Freeze takes the stand. And you confessed after the doctors revived you. Yes. And what did you confess? That I murdered 3 women as part of an experiment. And did you murder 3 women? Page of Batman's interrogation where he said, I killed them. I've fought him before, many times. I do not hesitate to admit that. But he was a different man that night. On the roof, he didn't care that I hadn't done it. That those women had nothing to do with me. He just kept hitting me until I had to say yes, or Batman was going to kill me. And then there's the conclusion page, which really ties the whole story up in a nice bow. One moment, please. Really, it gives you everything you need to know about what this story arc's going to be, even if it only lasts another issue. And it's a really good cliffhanger. The jury convenes. They say, okay, now it's down to us. Let's just get a quick look at where we're at. Who thinks that Mr. Freeze is guilty? Who thinks that he's innocent? Show of hands. All right. Well, I think we're all in the right frame of mind. Real quick, was everyone unanimous on this? Does anyone actually think Mr. Freeze might be innocent? Bruce is the only one to raise his hand. I like that. That's... There's so much to unpack here. Alright, let's start at the real basic end. Why does Batman lock up his criminals? Well, it's a nice little storage area for writers to be able to use those characters again. Instead of him killing them. And also, it gels a little bit better that, Batman just doesn't go kill whoever creates a problem. He actually tries to give them a chance at redemption by putting them into what is meant to be, somewhere in the back of your head, a system for reform. So that's the reason. In story, it's gotta kind of get weird that Batman keeps arresting these people and they just keep, coming back over and over and over again. And then to deal with Batman's brutal methods and then having to see the other side of it as a civilian, having to see the way people perceive him, the way that they seem to implicitly trust him, even though when he's aware, he's able to see that he's not in the right frame of mind to deal with this, but now he's got a chance to make it right, and so he's got to deal with it, and it's that like pathos and guilt that the character always has. Batman somewhere in the back of his mind blames himself for his parents' death a lot of the times. To like hear Freeze say, "I didn't do it, I confessed because he was being so brutal with me," it's really interesting. There's a lot going on with that. And so for him to see, no, I'm clearly not in the right state of mind. I don't know what I was thinking. And now I have a chance to, send Freeze off without having to, compound his sentence further. I've got to fight on this one. And it's really interesting. I also like how Tom King writes the jury. Not that we get a ton of them, but they kind of just come back from the trial and they go straight to, okay, trial over, our turn. We're stuck here in this cold-ass room until we decide. Initial thoughts. You know how many times Batman saved this city? Screw Mr. Freeze. I mean, come on. Mr. Freeze is a known killer, a lunatic. He did it. He's blaming Batman. It's so obvious. Yeah, Batman saved my mom from the Joker. All I'm saying is he's solid. He said it was Freeze. Yeah, seems pretty clear what direction we're going, so let's move on to an initial vote then. Who says guilty? That's pretty accurate to juries, I feel. You gotta think about, like, trial by your peers kind of thing means, and, your peers suck. Like, pick 12 people at random. They're gonna decide your fate. Fuck, that sucks. People are idiots. People are conditioned to just believe and trust the police. So when it's something like this, where the police say this guy did it, doesn't matter what he says. If he's got a bad rap, it's just automatically bad for him. It doesn't matter. It's not impartial, even though it's meant to be. Throwing some shade there if you didn't pick up on it. I don't know. Really interesting, really fun turn. And a good way to explore the reaction Bruce is having to this without having to just focus on the pain. It's a good way to contextualize the way in which he's behaving, and still be able to tell a story and move things forward and get some, you know, story time featured for Mr. Freeze. And again, yeah, it's just cool to have Dick Grayson run around as Batman again. Yay. It's fun. I miss it. Oh, what's going on in the comments? Is jail really a place for reformation? For me, they seem more like pits you put people who society doesn't need to simplify it. No, that's exactly what they are, but we say they're supposed to be a place for reformation. Anyway, yeah, I think that's going to do it for Batman 51. I didn't talk much about Lee Week's art because it's just amazing, and you should know that just by looking at it. I was a little disappointed we didn't get a reference to Porky's, though maybe I just missed it. Otherwise, really solid issue. I think this is my favorite page. This, like, if you were in the costume, this would totally be a meme. But it's really cool, like, character moment and stuff, and I quite like it. Anyway. This is really a good page, though. This I like. Alrighty. Yep, let's go ahead and go on to trade talk then. Just gonna do some clicking around real quick. Alrighty. It's a heavy book. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Trade Talk. This week we've got Daredevil, the Man Without Fear. Infamously famous book by Frank Miller. Infamously famous. Haha. Yeah, so this is... If you've never read this before, like myself, the best way I can describe this is it's Batman Year One, but with Daredevil. Like... literally everything about it. It's almost the exact same fucking tone in every conceivable way. It's like a retelling of Daredevil's origin. This goes more into like the before he became Daredevil thing than it is like his first like time as Daredevil, but it's like the same tone, the same kind of ideas playing around in it. It's written in like, you know, not crazy Frank Miller style, which I really like. What's funny is the version I got here has Frank Miller's original script in the back, and I only read a little bit of it because, I don't know, I just didn't have the time, but I really like this. Frank Miller's scripts, in the 80s at least, are exactly like Frank Miller's writing in the book itself. Act 1. At age 8, Matt Murdock is a dirty-faced little terror. His hair is an overgrown weed, bright orange in color. His eyes are green and wild. The impoverished neighborhood of Hell's Kitchen is his home. Its sun-baked streets and rattling fire escapes form his playground. Matt plagues fat patrolman Eichwitz, who'd throw Matt into juvenile court if it weren't for the black ski mask Matt wears to conceal his identity. Eichwitz is left puffing and red after Matt's boldest stunt. One sweltering summer afternoon, Matt steals Eichwitz's nightstick right from his belt, right in front of Julio and Rachel, and the other neighborhood brats Eichwitz had caught playing about an open fire hydrant. Eichwitz doesn't have a hope of catching Matt, the way the boy flies down the street on his skateboard and scrambles to the rooftops like a monkey. I mean, is that not the most Frank Miller thing you've ever heard? And it's the fucking script. Can you imagine being the artist and be like, can you imagine being John Romita Jr.? You're like, no panel breakdowns? It's so Frank Miller. It's hilarious. But then, like, I mean, it's interesting to see how that tone gets across, though, because you kind of get it. Like, they really don't... It really does break down exactly like the script says. It's just... It's so totally off. It's hilarious. But yeah, then like Frank Miller goes in and adds different caption. He doesn't script out the captions and dialogue. Summertime in the Manhattan neighborhood of Hell's Kitchen. The days are bright and hot and smell of mischief. Oh no, full of mischief. And the nights are cool and restless with the hum of the city calling to the boy, Matt Murdock. Calling to him, promising him something he cannot yet understand. Soon Dad will call him in, and Matt will toss under the covers and stare into the night sky and wait for the dawn and more mischief. It's so Frank Miller. I love it. This was before Frank Miller went crazy. But yeah, so we get some previews of Matt's life when he was a kid. We get the background of his father being the boxer that like was kind of forced into being a mob enforcer. Otherwise, they'd come after his kid. We get like Matt's trouble with bullying and how his dad told him he wasn't allowed to fight back. Which has an interesting turn because when he does fight back and goes tells his dad, so thinking that his dad will be proud of him, his dad hits him, and that's just completely breaks Matt's mind. And I like this section of dialogue, or I like this monologue here. And if even Dad can be wrong, then anyone can do bad things. Anybody at all. The only way to stop people from being bad is to make rules. Laws. Somewhere in a long and lonely night, the boy's course is set. He will study the rules. He will study the laws. So, like, the idea of why does Matt Murdock become a lawyer is baked into the character now, and it's not just Stan Lee saying, oh, well, now I can have him go represent that Spider-Man whenever he gets in trouble with the law, blah, blah, blah. So now it's, like, baked into, it's a deep-seated character thing, and it's just, it's perfect. And then it goes through, him losing his eyesight and gaining superpowers, meeting Stick for the first time and training with Stick on how to use his extra senses. I love this 9-panel grid. You don't see Frank Miller knock out the 9-panel grid very often, but damn can he do it, can he, script it well. I mean, you gotta give some credit to, you gotta give a lot of credit to John Romita Jr. here, but this plays and paces off really, really well of Matt learning how to use the powers. That's really, really cool. He also learns how to shoot a barrel bow and arrow. That gets interesting. So all kinds of stuff with Stick gets put in here. Oh, beautiful. And then, the stuff with the father happens where his dad decides not to throw a fight and gets the shit kicked out of him and he gets killed for it. Then we kind of fast forward a bit to, we don't fast forward. Matt goes on a bit of a spree and beats the shit out of the guys that killed his dad. Kind of hunts him down and takes him out, which is quite an accomplishment since not only is he a child, but he's also blind. Uses his ninja-ing. But along the way, during this attempt to catch these guys and get justice, he breaks into a brothel to hunt one of them down, and during the scuffle, one of the girls falls out a window and to her death, and Matt blames himself for that, as he probably should. Because of this, Stick abandons him, yada yada. So Matt goes off to college where he meets Foggy and starts studying and deals with bullying and helps Foggy out, and then he meets Elektra Nachios when they're teenagers, and she kind of just starts to act like a thorn in his side, and there's a courtship and a relationship built up, and it's Miller planting the seeds for things that he'd already done, if I'm remembering my Daredevil timeline correctly. So it's a bit of a retcon in a way there, but it works. It's fun. It's like this interesting, like, you can see that this girl is nuts, and Matt's nuts for her, and that's really cool. I love this scene where she's playing this musical piece perfectly that's very, very complicated, and Matt throws one of her bodyguards on top of the piano, and then she just keeps playing and doesn't even bother. And then that night, even though Matt's been shot in the arm and bruised to hell, he gets back to his apartment and he's waiting in the shower for him, but Electra Nachios. And they do it! They have sex! So, lots of cool stuff going on there, lots of cool character building and things, and then you see that Electra's pretty knuckin' futz, as she goes off to, just kill some criminals. She, lures them into attacking her so she will have the chance to kill them. Very, Charles Bronson death wishes-ish. She just murders the shit out of them for fun, and enjoys doing it, and yada, yada, yada. Her relationship with Matt kind of fizzles out because she doesn't want to bring him down with her. And this is all coupled with the rise of the Kingpin, it turns out. And then Matt kind of comes back to New York after the Kingpin's had a while to establish control and has to deal with some of the crime in that. But he doesn't want to take action on it. He wants to go live his life as a big corporate lawyer now. But events with the Kingpin selling child pornography and shit like that kind of crossed Matt's radar with a girl that he was befriending, and he goes into it and gets involved in the situation and all this madness, and ends up breaking up a child sex ring that the Kingpin's men were running, and it's all, it's the classic black suit. The proto Daredevil suit. So he goes in and he does all the fighting, ninjaing, and beats up Kingpin's men and saves the day, and that's when he decides that he can't just sit on the sidelines anymore. He's gotta stay in New York, stay in Hell's Kitchen, and bring justice to it as Daredevil. Kind of concludes the series there. So, I'd never read much Daredevil before. I was reading Charles Soule's run for a while there, and I was kind of disappointed in it, so I dropped it. But I'd always heard people talk about Frank Miller's Daredevil, and yeah, it's damn good. There's no denying it. It's Frank Miller when he was at his peak. It's everything that Frank Miller's known for doing well. It's problematic as fuck, and I just don't care, because I can take it for what it is. I know exactly what Frank Miller is trying to do and getting at, and I know where this kind of thought leads to him and all that, but I don't know. I can still enjoy the things that there are to enjoy in it, is kind of what it comes down to for me, and there's undeniably this undertone that works for it that makes it really, really interesting to read. I also like the way Kingpin gets his rise here as a mob, as a gangster that's willing to do the really dirty things. Like, he shows that he infiltrates the old mob, who are unwilling to flood the streets with drugs because their own families live in those neighborhoods, and they don't want junkies for relatives, and they don't want to have the dirtiness of child sex rings on their conscience, and Kingpin just doesn't care. Yeah, I like that. That's very ruthless, kind of evil businessman-like of Kingpin, evil gangster. So that stuff really works for me. It's just really classic Frank Miller, and this was, again, before he went crazy. Plus, John Romita Jr. on the art is just gorgeous in, like, that really gritty, ugly kind of way. Like, Frank Miller obviously does the gritty, ugly art, but you know, his style is still reasonably limited. John Romita Jr. is able to do the same thing, but sell it in such a grandiose kind of way. And so you got this big scary dude, and he's just covered in hair. It's just a hairy son of a bitch, and it just makes it look so much like grimier, because you don't usually see that kind of thing of like the just bespeckled chest hair kind of thing. So just little details like that. I mean, it's not a little detail. That's a lot of squigglies to draw. Stuff like that can really sell a book and just make it work. It's just cool. It's a good story. It's a good story. It's well done. I like it. I really like it. I don't know if I'm going to read anything else in Frank Miller's run. I'm just kind of working my way through a bunch of different things here and there. Next week will be some Black Panther for you, so look forward to that. Anyway, everyone, thanks very much for watching. Till next time, bye! Alright. Tea. Anyway, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Comic Reviews. Doesn't look like there's much going on in the live comments, but that is okay. Everyone, thanks very much for watching. Till next time, see ya!